Welcome to the Questions Podcast. We're going to talk today about artificial intelligence. We have Casey Adams, Jordan Young, and our very special guest, Ryan Clarkson, attorney at law, good friend of mine, good man, looks the least like an attorney in the room. You know, guess you didn't get the black T-shirt memo.
Malibu attorney.
Malibu attorney.
We've established this.
Malibu attorney.
Malibu attorney.
Gotta love it.
Their own breed.
That'll really help your rates. Yeah.
Friday Malibu casual.
Friday Malibu casual.
Oh my
So the
gosh.
plan is to talk about artificial intelligence, and you know, I know honestly, I feel like most of you here in the room know a lot more than I do. So I feel like you guys should lead a lot of the stuff, and I'm going to ask questions that I think that a lot of other people out there probably have about artificial intelligence. You know, some real basic stuff. The little bit that I've learned is very interesting, and but the most interesting thing is the way that people that dive into it, the way that they react to the information. They all seem a little bit sketched about what's
it's
to come,
sketched for
right?
sure.
Yeah,
totally.
very interesting. And so we also have different, you know, clearly, Jordan, you're going to want to talk about music and the way that AI affects music. And this
For
is
sure.
why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did recently with a song?
Let's hear
So
it.
the way that
Ghostwriter.
the way this kind of topic came up is when we shot episode 1, I had brought in this song that I did that was using a Kanye West voice model, but it was a song that I wrote and produced with a writer of mine, Aria. And I had Aria record the vocal in his own voice. He's a fan of Kanye, so he understands the cadence and the rhythms and how to kind of mimic his voice. But it's uniquely his voice. And then I just ran that through this Kanye algorithm, and it just literally exact same timing, exact same melody, exact same rhythm, but with the nuances and characteristics of Kanye's voice. And then I brought it in, played it for you guys, and you guys thought it was pretty interesting. And then literally the following week or two, it's the only thing we've read on the internet for the last 2 weeks, right? I mean, I've seen a dozen or more news articles. I'm sure you're starting to see, like, you're probably done a deep dive in all of it now. So it felt like the relevant topic of the week.
Yeah,
I agree.
Certainly.
Now, wait, who wrote this algorithm, the Kanye algorithm? Like, how do you get that? Somebody must have...
So there is an open source repository on GitHub that I've done some deep diving, and I've tried to reach out to the creators of it. I believe it is from a university in China. At least one of the people is from a university in China, it looks like. I don't know who they are. There's no names, no faces, no...
Huge Kanye fan, clearly that guy is.
Yeah.
What is GitHub for people that might not know? People might
So,
not know what that
okay.
is.
So GitHub, I have a software development company. So, you know, I might be more familiar. GitHub is basically just a central database where, you know, computer programmers can create code and store their code, and people can, you know, borrow the code and use it for other things. And there's different licenses. Is that a safe, you know?
For sure.
Yeah. So it's basically a place where computer programmers go and nerd out, you know. And so this code is available. It's not the easiest to use. There's not an app. I've had dozens of people hit me up. What's the app you're using? Like it's an iPhone app. It's not an iPhone app. It's like a fairly complex process to change the voice. It probably takes about 20 minutes for each time you want to do it. Yeah, it's sort of a very interesting new technology. And we made this song and posted online, and just now we're seeing like this Drake and Weeknd one came out.
So when you're doing that, are you using like a specific artificial intelligence, meaning that there's like different ones out there? I've heard a little bit about narrow artificial intelligence, right? Which is basically they design something to try to get really good at the game Go, or they get something to get really good at the game chess, right?
Yeah.
But that is what it is good at doing. And then you have the general artificial intelligence, which is more, you know, something that you basically take the reins off and just say, go get good at everything, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
And it becomes a jack of all trades, but really master of none. Right?
Yeah, so people call that an AGI now,
Right.
artificial general
Right.
intelligence. That's actually a good thing to touch on, is just what is AI at this point. Because like you said, that's actually a really great
My
distinction.
idea of AI I mean, the biggest parallel that I can see is like, did you ever see the movie Transcendence? It was a Johnny Depp movie.
I did. Yes.
Where they like
so.
plug his consciousness into the internet. You know, he's dying of some disease or cancer or something, and he's, a computer guy in like Palo Alto somewhere, and he and his friends, they're like, let's figure out if we can download my consciousness, and they upload him into the internet. They give him access online. And he basically just like changes the world very quickly. Starts to develop like these incredible medical techniques. And I think that the twist at the end of the movie is that he was doing all of these things that we all perceived as negative, but it was in order for him to actually just save the planet. Like his whole goal was like, I want to save the planet,
Yeah.
and save humanity. But so his intentions were really actually good, even though a lot of the things that people were seeing were catastrophic. That's kind of like the biggest parallel that I see as far as like what could potentially happen. The fear that people have is that you can develop this consciousness essentially that has the ability to be able to manipulate things, right? Finding vulnerabilities. Let's just say banking, right? Like somebody that something that could go into the banking system and say, I'm going to figure out how to round everything this way and I can just very easily put, tens of $millions into an account like that, which was in the movie, right?
Yeah.
Different things like that, being able to manipulate the system in order to kind of get what it wants. But what does it want, right? What are these things? How do we program it to have wants and desires and things, right? These are where I also see these big roadblocks where it's like to be human or to have free will means that you also have to have the ability to be able to like choose what direction you want to go, and just a computer program, is it going to have that?
Yeah.
No, I think that's good.
My first run-in with AI that we're thinking about, as we kind of think about AI right now in this moment in history, was with ChatGPT, and it was probably about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago.
Right.
I mean, prior to that, you think of other AIs, right? You think of certain specific, narrower, disciplinary AIs that help get really good at voice recognition, or let's say physical chemistry, or languages, or something like that. And then you think of social media platforms like, Twitter or Facebook or whatever, right?
Yep.
Who, all of those were all about algorithms, AI algorithms that wanted to keep eyeballs on them and keep people scrolling, right?
Which is very effective, I will say.
Super effective,
like
right?
really effective. And I've noticed that Google's algorithms are probably the best because those YouTube shorts are fantastic.
Dude, last night I went to the Clippers game, okay? Suns are in town playing the Clippers, game 3. And I take an Uber Black home. I've got a driver. I'm in an SUV. It's like 11:30 at night. And I see my driver kind of, he's putting his head between his legs. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, what is this guy doing? And I lean forward, and he's got his cell phone between his legs.
Right.
He's taking his eyes off of the road repeatedly like this. He's driving in the right lane on the freeway, okay, going like 55. And I lean forward. He's scrolling through his Instagram
You're
feed.
kidding.
I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Did you say that to him?
Yeah. I'm not a confrontational person.
Right.
I like to avoid confrontation. Like, even though I'm a lawyer and I like the adversarial process and all that, in my real life, I'm not really an overly confrontational person. He pulls his headphones out. He's like, what did you say? I said, what are you doing? You're looking at your phone, scrolling through social media. You're driving me. I don't appreciate that. He apologized. He was contrite about it, at least. And then he was like 10 and 2 after that. But I thought, that's how crazy it's become,
that's
right?
insane.
Right.
You're driving the car,
As an Uber driver, dude, that's ridiculous. He just wanted to see the game highlights, I'm sure,
Yeah, right, sure, whatever. I don't know. But
he just hadn't quite caught up to the car drives itself AI, whatever that one is. So
I'm curious too, and I think this would be great for the audience. I would love to know, Brandon, how you guys know each other, and then a little bit about your background, Ryan, for the audience. Obviously, on episode 1, it was just us 3 here, first guest on the show. So I'd love to know more about your background, and I'm sure the people listening would as well.
Well, Ryan and I have known each other for quite a long time now, actually. He and my mom were friends initially first. They had met somehow, and then Ryan and I, as we would like hang out and see each other, we became pretty close friends because we had a lot of common interests and stuff. And then it was about I don't know, a year or a little more maybe ago that Ryan was like, he moved to Malibu, which was great, like a neighbor to me. So that was great to gain Ryan as a neighbor. And then he said, I also got this place in Malibu. I want you to come check it out because there's like a studio in the back. And so I came down here and I checked it out and I was like, oh, wait, this is like a fantastic spot. Like this could really be something. So Ryan and I have been working to build this place out and develop this place to make it a very functional studio. And then we always had the idea of doing this as well, podcasting in here and being able to kind of make it a content creation space. So he and I have been working on that together and we're just great friends. And he's an attorney, so he runs a class action attorney law firm. You could probably explain a lot more about that than I could, but yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Brandon's a great friend. I love him, his family, and it's wonderful to have him as a neighbor. Obviously, he's rolled the red carpet out to me and our family as new, as immigrants, I guess, to Malibu, because it does feel like a kind of a different country in a sense, right?
It is,
but in a beautiful way. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it's been really fun collaborating with you on this project. So what do I do in my professional life? I have a public interest law firm, and we're about 21 attorneys, and we prosecute cases on behalf of ordinary people in order to level the playing field between ordinary, real people and moneyed, powerful interests. And we do that in all kinds of different verticals. We do it in the data breach and misuse contexts, hence, my interest in the topic we're discussing today, but employment and antitrust and anti-competitive practices, environmental law and its intersectionality with, a fair functioning marketplace. We got Earth Day tomorrow. We'll be celebrating that. So that's what I do. I think that there is a lot of opportunity when it comes to leveraging this AI that has, especially these large language models that we're kind of discussing today. There's an even bigger responsibility, I believe, though, too, because as we've seen from all of the secondary kind of negative effects from prior, kind of much more elementary versions of AI in social media platforms, and all of those kinds of bad things that occurred from political divisiveness and election
meddling
results, and meddling and the January 6th insurrection, and there's teen suicide is on the rise. There's all kinds of negative repercussions because of the irresponsible deployment of that technology.
The complete deterioration of information and whether or not it's good information or not.
Exactly. One. Yeah, truth is on. Right. Truth
it's incredible.
And this generative AI stuff, specifically with voice manipulation, is just going to exacerbate that.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, I just saw a news article that I shared with you guys earlier today. There was a kidnapping. There was a daughter was kidnapped, and AI faked her voice. Or I don't know if she was actually kidnapped. They said they kidnapped her.
Right.
They AI faked her voice, and they got a ransom, or they were trying to get a ransom out of it. And I guess the daughter was fine.
Right. We were talking about this a little bit the other day. I mean, those are the big ramifications for people that have kids, right? You think to yourself, oh, well, what if somebody, it takes 3 seconds right now, I think, to basically make a really great copy of somebody's voice. So all they have to do is just, call, get a couple words, and then hang up. And now all of a sudden you've got, our daughter's voice that they could call and say, hey, Dad, I'm really in trouble and I need this, and it sounds just like them. I mean, it's a scary thing that we're walking into this kind of I tried to reassure him by saying, there's these other things there's so many other tools and things that you can do in order to kind of protect yourself from that though as well, right? Like give your kids safe words and give them things that only they would know, and so that you could always ask them things like that. So I do think that we will adapt around some of that stuff, including the deep fake things. I heard today that, if you just look at like real estate, right? Like who owns this, who owns that? There have to be so many like third parties involved in like who owns your house, right? There's a bank, there's a title company, there's an escrow company, there's like the broker, there's all these, and all those third parties make it so that you can actually run it efficiently, so that we can know who owns what and stuff, right? Like it's not just all consolidated under one roof,
right?
And those kind of things are going to have to be implemented when it comes to like some of these deep fakes, maybe even information, right? Like what information is actually real, and we might have to get to a point where it isn't just Fox News or MSNBC that's giving themselves the oversight of what's factual or not, but maybe there has to be a system in place where it's like a checks and balances system, even for information and for what is a deep fake, what isn't. A label that goes on that says this has been, this is organic certified kind of thing, like we see in the market, but something that.
So it's funny. During the pandemic, when Clubhouse, were you guys on Clubhouse at all? Was that like
I was there.
You were there.
Yep.
I know you were there.
I visited it once.
You visited it. Are you familiar?
I don't even know what it is.
You don't know what Clubhouse is?
No. Clubhouse was when the pandemic happened and we were all stuck in the house in quarantine. There was this app that came out, and it was basically just group phone calls, kind of. It was a voice app where you could talk and you could engage.
Yes. Okay.
No video, just audio.
Audio rooms in a
whatever.
sense.
Yeah. Audio rooms. Right.
And crypto was blowing up, and I was getting into that world, and I actually hosted a couple interesting calls. One with Edward Snowden, which was really interesting.
Wow.
The other one that I sort of co-moderated was with Senator Tim Kaine, who was the vice presidential nominee for when Hillary ran. And I specifically talked to him about the divisiveness. And just for context, my mother was a news anchor in Toronto. And in Canada, news is treated incredibly differently than the way we perceive news down here. And I've lived in Canada for half my life and in the US for half my life. So I'm, pretty qualified to look at both. And really the biggest difference is down here, everything is about money. Like, news only exists to sell ads, and once you get into that world, now your Fox doesn't really care what information they present as long as they can acquire market share. And by being the quote unquote heel, you could call them in some ways. Someone would half the country would disagree with that. They've sort of carved out their own niche, and that they're the most viewed singular news station in the country. So
right.
And
infotainment.
Infotainment, exactly. And so one of the things I said is, I suggested, and he kind of just brushed it off and didn't really give me the time of the day on it, was, why don't we have, just like when you buy a pack of cigarettes, you have like a black lung on the image on it, and it's, there's a warning, hey, this could cause damage. Every news station, it's all run through the FCC. If you want to offer news, you have to list it as news, and if it's commentary and more just opinion, you have to put a warning up front and say, this is not news, this is commentary, this is entertainment, take this information with a grain of salt. How else do you do it? Otherwise you get into like state media and now you try to real fine line in a different direction.
It's a slippery slope, right? So, what is the government going to qualify as, like, oh well, this is legit, right? And who's in charge?
And do you even want them doing that?
Well,
isn't that the whole point of a free press?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. But this is a big issue.
It's
I don't know how to handle it in the right ways. I don't know what. One thing that maybe Fox News, there is definitely a correlation between the fact that the things that keep people the most engaged on social media are the things that make them enraged, right? Like if you're enraged about something, you're engaged, right? It's that equation. In order to maximize money, they need to maximize engagement. In order to maximize engagement, they have to maximize outrage, right?
Yeah. So
it really is. It's incentivized to make people kind of pissed.
Yeah.
And I think Fox News has been doing that too for a long time. And that's been one of the things that makes them such a winner, is like you watch it and you're like, yeah, what is going on with this country? I'm mad, and I'm just, but you got to watch it the next day because, it's not boring for the people that view it. It's not boring.
Yeah.
It's entertainment. It is. And I don't know the way you oversight all this stuff. I don't, because people are just getting pigeonholed into these such silos.
Yeah,
and then we got to the point where we don't even want information that doesn't back up
what we already,
because it becomes a part of our identity. It's like if you're telling me that the way that I've been thinking for the last decade or the last year or the last since the pandemic about vaccines, about whatever, and then all of a sudden you present me with all this information that will tell me that I'm wrong, I'm too scared to even look at it. I don't even want to look at it. I don't want to. I mean, I'm not saying me personally, but a lot of people like that. There's a lot of people like that out there.
Have you guys heard of an app called Artifact?
Negative.
No, I haven't heard.
So the two founders of Instagram initially, they left Instagram after acquisition, and they recently launched an app called Artifact, and it's pretty much using AI to gather different, more so like points of views in news to create more of like a decentralized version of what you consume. And it's actually quite fascinating. I've used it a handful of times, and they launched it I think like 2-3 months ago, but it's bringing in like opposing points of views, and they use AI to scrape the internet to more so like bring out truth. And they think that's sort of like the next pioneer of news, of just bringing together different opinions from quote unquote credible sources versus, what they saw with social, which they're very unhappy with, just the outrage of like, that's just, you feed into the algorithm. They want to make it more open source.
Are you experiencing less outrage as you
I
consume
mean, I don't,
via Artifact?
I'm not someone that just like goes and seeks news on like a daily basis from like, oh, I need to go watch this.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not the best user to answer in a sense, but I find it very polarizing in a positive way, where it's like you'll read one thing, then you read something that has a completely different perspective, but it's all in topics of like tech or business or whatever it is that you're selecting as the news that you want to see. But it's cool. You guys should check it out, and
I will
take a peek at it. It's cool.
These things that we've trusted for so long. Trust is such an important word when it comes to journalism, really, and even in government, right? Like there's for a long time, societies around the world and even in this country, like there's been a trust in the government, that the government is keeping us safe, right? We still think that, right? That we trust that the government is ahead of the curve when it comes to military, world affairs, things like that, and they're doing their best to keep us safe. We used to trust, news anchors. Walter Cronkite, is that his name?
Cronkite, yeah.
I mean, there were like people that were very, very trusted around the country. People had said, well, if he said it, then it's, it must be, factual. And we've lost all that. I mean, people have no trust in anything that is an institution or an establishment or anything that symbolizes something that could potentially be corrupt.
Yeah.
None.
I feel like people right now want to break down the systems that have been in place and build new ones. Yeah. But I don't really know like what is the effective way to build the new system. And I think one of the things that AI is going to expose is that a lot of the things that we've had in place are not going to function in this new world.
Yeah.
When that exists. And one of the things, if you get down to the bottom of it, I think education is a huge part of it, because we've spoken about this before, there isn't a huge emphasis on critical thinking in this country for the majority of people. There are, of course, lots of very brilliant people in this country, but I feel like, when education budgets like get dropped and there's difficulty in people learning the things that they need to be able to learn to be able to be a functioning adult and be able to figure out what information should I be listening to, what shouldn't I be listening to. Once you lose that, then it's easy to sort of change the way people think.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is some huge concerns that the challenges that we face right now, especially with this new technology that's just been foisted upon hundreds of millions of people in the world. Those challenges, kind of our 18th century framework for dealing with problems, mm-hmm. right? The framework through which we pass laws and enforce them, and the way in which we regulate business and industry, they move too slowly, and they're otherwise inadequate to deal with these challenges. And I think that, to your point earlier, one of the reasons why so much divisiveness exists, I think, and people feel so siloed and feel so comfortable in their own echo chambers, is largely because they don't realize that they're in their own echo chambers. I mean, does the average person realize that what Jordan is seeing is totally different than what I see.
Right.
No, they think that Jordan is seeing everything that they see, but for whatever reason, Jordan's coming to a different conclusion
Right.
on topics of importance.
You're very correct.
So what's happening, I think, is that the system has changed surreptitiously right under our noses, and we don't realize that we are now operating with and navigating life through a system that is totally foreign to us, and we're thinking in an old way as if we're operating under a kind of like echo chamber system, but we're not.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember, I think 2016 election being sent things by, I won't say who, but people that were of the generation, my parents' generation, we'll just say, and getting sent things where clearly I was like, wait a minute, this isn't true at all. But there's a generation of people that are just ahead of us that didn't grow up with the internet, right? I guess me as well, didn't really grow up like online. But there's a whole group of people that thinks that if it's written down and you find it online, it must be true. Just that.
Right.
If it's in black and white, written down online, it must be true.
Yeah.
And there's been so many entities at play to try to make things look like they're legit, like fake news organizations and stuff like that, right? They call themselves Newsmax, those things. But there's really there's all of a sudden these new organizations pop up that just say, oh, well, we, trust us, right? Because we've got the label and we've got a business address somewhere and all that stuff. And we've got an article that's reasonably well written about how this is happening. This is such in the infancy of even just the internet in general that we're dealing with a generation of people that were like our parents' age that just even believed that anything they saw on a screen in black and white was true.
Yeah.
That it wasn't even something they needed to question because they were used to newspapers. They were used to getting something from a trusted organization where if you read it in an article, that meant that there must have been some oversight. So now all of a sudden they're moving to the screens and they just expect that it should carry the same weight and have that same kind of value as a newspaper, but it doesn't. And those people have been preyed upon by the system, or people that kind of want to instill an agenda with either those people, and it's happening in every generation because you see a lot of there's a big effort to make young people not believe in this country also, or have a lot of distrust in what this country stands for.
Okay, so the question I have for you, Ryan, is do you feel that the divide that we're seeing, whether it's through social media or regular news media, is this just the corporate interest, capitalism, just this is sort of the natural way that it works, where you have companies that have various interests and they're going to push their agendas and that's creating separation, the algorithms don't help? Or is there a larger societal, movement towards dividing us? Is there a greater purpose? Is there a control purpose? I know this gets into the very kind of, Illuminati-esque conversation. So I want to try to steer away from anything too sensationalized, but is this just the natural way of things or is there something bigger going on?
I think it's a good question. I wish I knew the answer to it. If I had to guess where a lot of this is coming from, I suspect that it's because of the way in which we incentivize conduct from individuals, businesses, entities, politicians. Whatever it is that your society incentivizes is what is most likely to be brought about, right? So if we are a capitalist society that's focused only on profits, right? Only on profits. And I'm not saying that capitalism is focused only on profits, but to the extent that you have a capitalistic system in which it is focused only on profits, then all conduct from businesses and members of the economy are going to be focused on maximization of profits. And so, that collides with, other values, right? It collides with benevolence. It collides with charity and philanthropy and
collides with the mental health of a 14-year-old girl sitting in her room on TikTok all night.
It certainly does. So So I think that's part of it. And then politically, if you zoom out even further, you look at the way in which laws are passed and enforced, or not. That's largely due to the way our power struggle exists in this country from a political standpoint, right? You've got two parties who, right now there's political gridlock in Washington. You can't pass a law really on anything. Even laws that
Should
common
be
sense people
bipartisan.
and the super majority of citizens in this country want passed, right?
Like, there's minority rule. Yeah, there are some things that are minority rule in this country. One of them is the attack on abortion rights.
Sure.
The other one is gun laws, where a vast majority of people think that women should have the choice, and a vast majority of people think that there should be background checks at the very minimum, and probably bans on assault rifles. But it's minority rule.
Two very good examples, fairly non-controversial, except from a small sliver of very conservative
evangelicals and NRA members.
Yeah. So you can't even pass that. I'm gonna take that thought and I'm gonna connect it to this concept of AI, right? Because I'm very concerned that the issue that Jordan just raised about our inability to get aligned, right? And now I've given an example of ways in which not only in industry we can't get aligned, in incentivizing, what's right, but politically, right? So if you've got this super powerful technology, right, built on these large language models like ChatGPT, for example, that presents a huge series of challenges, and there hasn't been any framework established for the responsible deployment of the technology so that those challenges are addressed from the outset, then do we really have any chance at having our legislature solve this, right? Or do we really maybe need to gather thought leaders from all across industries to weigh in on this and try to build this framework from the ground up right now before things really spiral out of control?
I was actually listening to a podcast, literally talking about AI regulation. There's this podcast called the All In Podcast, and this guy David Sachs, who's a big venture capitalist, his point of view was, it's one thing to go out and regulate or try to and attempt to regulate AI, but if you do so, the innovation the lack of innovation that would occur with the technology if regulated too heavily initially would be slowed down when, other countries are going to be building AI, utilizing AI in every single different industry. And it just poses the question of at what point is it too late? And at what point does it decrease the level of optimization for what it can be used for in a positive way? Because, someone else on the show was talking about, when you get spam calls, and as you were saying, they could clone someone's voice. If you could do that out at scale 1,000 times to grandmas that are in their 70s and 80s, you could probably scam 10 to 100 times more people using AI to do robocalls at scale. But then on the flip side, it says the technology that we'll be building should be able to stop that from happening and be able to detect that with AI. So there's this, in my opinion, balancing act of in what point is it bad for it, and then in what point can it solve those problems? Yeah,
there's a bit of a, I can't help but just feel like there's a bit of a catastrophization of a new technology, right? Because back in the day, I remember hearing about this, that when the printing press really started to take off and people were printing books, there were people out there that were like, we've lost our kids. Like, our kids now, all they want to do is read. And it was a big deal where people were really upset with the idea that they were going to have access. It was like the iPad. It was like a version of an iPad for kids. And there was outcry about it. People were not happy about the fact that this brand new technology, the printing press, was now robbing the children's brains, right? They're not playing outside anymore. All they want to do is sit in their room and read books, right? It was an issue. Then you have the radio. And I'm sure that there were people that were complaining about, how the radio and all they ever do is sit in front of the radio and listen to music and listen to, talk shows and whatever it was, right? And obviously you have television, and then we have social media. Now we have the merge of kind of like social media, online world, the metaverse, for lack of a better term, and then how AI integrates into that. It's just a new technology that I think we will end up coming to some sense of balance with, in the same way that, like, now we look back at books and we're like, I would love for my kid to sit in the room and read a book. Like, that sounds like a great thing. And also, all along the way, I guarantee you there's been people that have exploited those new technologies. So people that exploited the printing press in order to print flyers to try to get an agenda out. People that used radio, or even like presidents that were elected because they had a good radio voice. And that's how you would hear the debate, was on radio, right? You wouldn't had no visual, none of that. Presidents that were elected because they were tall, because now all of a sudden we're on TV and one towers over the other one, and they're like, oh, I like him for some reason. Ones that were handsome,
He
better
dominates.
looking. Ones that were elected, going back to Obama's election, and from what I understand, they really used social media in a very, very powerful way, right? And which kind of moves on up until today, right? Where I do think that people have exploited this new technology in order to get their agenda across, right? And to influence people in ways. So I don't think it's just like what you were saying to your question. This isn't just like, capitalism. This is like human nature, where we're using this new technology in order to persuade people and exploit that new technology in order to get like our mission and our philosophy to spread our.
So the question is, where do you draw the line? And I can't remember where I heard this quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm sure somebody on the internet will correct me here. But I heard this quote that we are essentially cavemen with godlike technology. Our brains are still very much, somewhat primitive, even though we are obviously the most intelligent or dominant species on the planet. But then we have technology that our society has not quite caught up to, as far as, we can't even get along, and we have these hugely disruptive technologies. So when you bring up the printing press, I believe that was true. Whether it was or wasn't, anytime a new technology comes along, there's always going to be detractors and supporters. Excuse me.
Yep.
But when we talk about AI, and specifically AGI, general intelligence, so we're not talking about the chess bot that's just better than any human at one task. We're talking about a general, when we think of an AI movie, a personality in a box, in a machine, that can move and reprogram itself and do anything it wants, and has the entirety of human information and knowledge available in an instant, and can decipher patterns within that to develop new technology or new ideas or new things. Once you hit that singularity, the thing is, you don't know what happens after that. Once it's out of the box, you're stuck.
But isn't it stuck in the electronic world also, though? Like without the ability to be able to really, I mean, I know that a lot of things are connected via Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that stuff, but like at any point, if something got out of hand, couldn't we just kind of be like, let's flip the switch?
What do you think would happen if the entire world's power grid was shut down?
It would be chaotic, to say the least, but
catastrophic.
I actually heard yesterday, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, this reporter asked him, like, do you foresee, or how do you guys think about election fraud into the next election? And he said something similar to, he's like, we are monitoring it very closely, and we are able to turn things off. And he said it in his like sophisticated AI, point of view. But it was just, the overarching conversation was like, he knows we're testing the waters of what this can lead to. And that brings in like Elon's point of view. He's like, things are gonna go out of hand. We have to stop this. We have to like tune it back. The cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
But Sam's perspective was like, we can turn things off, but they're not the only.
You can turn it off now.
Yeah.
when it's not an AGI and is just a language model, but if we believe that there's some sort of consciousness in that consciousness is not some sort of metaphysical special thing, and it's actually just systems of neurons firing, and if you can replicate that in a computer system, and you actually have a self-aware being.
Like, you've seen the movie Free Guy?
Yeah.
Have you seen it? Like
Yeah.
The ending of that kind of dumbs it down for how AI could be, like, have its own point of view and do its own things.
I hear Sam Altman saying we can turn things off during an election, and I immediately have about 10 red flags that are raised, right?
Yeah, what can you turn on?
What can you turn on?
Yeah.
What can you turn off? Under what circumstances do you turn that thing off, right? Do you turn it off when something is said that's inconsistent with your political view? Do you turn it off, as it relates to a specific population of the of voters, or
of course,
on specific topics at a specific time, right? I mean,
and should they be the arbiter of this?
And should they be the arbiter of it? Exactly. Who's pulling who's pulling the puppet strings there, right? It's super concerning. I will say this. Jordan just used this term singularity, right? And when I heard that term, it kind of struck me as the reason why, when I was hearing Brandon's pitch about the printing press and kind of the aversion of acceptance of new technologies and the catastrophizing of those technologies, I used it for you.
Thank you.
I was just thinking about my last few weeks foray into AI, and I started using it just for fun. I was poking around on ChatGPT, and I was like, okay, I wonder if I can get this thing to write a haiku in the voice of Donald Trump, let's say. And sure enough, I got some really funny haikus in the voice of like a Donald Trump, right? This kind of like this wild character, and on brand, and the whole thing. It was hilarious. And then I started thinking about maybe creating short stories, right? So it was like a parlor trick. Talking to my wife and or my parents, we just had my dad's 70th birthday in Phoenix, and we were all sitting around, toasting to him. And then at the dinner table, I broke out my mobile, and ChatGPT. I pulled it up. I said, write me a story about a family celebrating their dad's 70th birthday in Phoenix, and do it in the voice of Dr. Seuss. And it started typing. I said, stop. Do it in 50 words or less. And sure enough, I had this like beautiful Dr. Seuss like story of what we were all doing there in Phoenix, and it was kind of fun. Then I was getting into business use cases, right? So we draft and file lawsuits all the time.
Yep.
So,
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, is there a way in which we could leverage this technology in order to make it more efficient and increase productivity at the firm? And writing emails and notice letters and lawsuits and discovery and all that stuff. And yes, you can do it. Yeah. And in fact, there some of the largest law firms in the world, and one in particular has its own law-focused AI that is working in connection with OpenAI to make contract drafting and review and brief writing and legal analysis and all that stuff much more efficient, and it's saving hundreds and thousands of attorney hours, right? But then I started, I came across this podcast from the guys who did The Social Dilemma, Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin. Yep. And it's called The AI Dilemma.
Was this wait? This is the YouTube link that you sent me, right? It's a presentation that they did at a thing, right?
They did a presentation, and then so there's a video, there's all these visuals. It runs like an hour 10 or something, and then they did a more truncated version of it that's audio only for their podcast, and it's like 40 minutes, but it walks through, what these large language models can do, and they make a very strong case for how we are seriously ill-equipped for how fast things are going to be changing. And I've long talked about this idea that we live in this exponential world, right, where things move fast and faster and faster and faster, and that exponentiality collides with finite resources, right? And if you define resources broadly, not just like, potable drinking water or fresh air or land or food, but like, human capacity and knowledge and attention and that sort of thing, right? But now we're in the world of double and triple, multiple exponentiality. And when you start laying those exponential curves on top of exponential curves, the speed at which things happen is so fast that once the genie is out of the bottle, right, to use your term, it's not really possible to get back in. And you need to have full buy-in from thought leaders around the world in order to address the very serious problems. So when I hear singularity, the one difference between the printing press, right, or the radio or the television and what we're facing now is what's at stake is not simply whether I should follow this newspaper or read the truth in this book or not, right? It is the very concept of reality versus like a digital or
unknown
imaginary world, right? So the physical world, right, and the truth or veracity, the realness of this physical world is what's at stake.
Yeah.
So the extinction thing, because I've also heard people say that this could lead to our extinction, right? I mean, there's like I think it was some like 10% of half of the people working in AI believe that there's a 10% chance that this is like our great extinction event.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Because AI currently has no boots on the ground. Like there's no like robots walking around going like protecting the power plants and all that stuff. I want to know how we go from Instagram to everybody's dead on the sidewalk, right?
Let's hear it, Jordan.
So here's my, I don't know. The point of a singularity is you don't know what's on the other side of it, right? So let's just preface: nobody has the answer, and
it's the Big Bang. It's the reason why we use that as the example for the Big Bang.
Or a black hole. Like you can't see into a black hole, but there might be a whole world in there. We don't know. We're not in Skynet where we're gonna have, thousands of like human engineered to kill human robots that are out, destroying the world. It's
one possibility.
It's a possibility, but you would need systems to be able to build those things and whatever. Maybe one day that is the case. An AGI could hijack a 3D printing metallurgy plant that could build things. Whatever.
Didn't Einstein say if you can imagine it, it'll become a reality? So if we're making movies like that, then one day that'll happen.
But you don't even have to go that far. If an AGI, a sentient AGI, went online and quickly acknowledged itself and, whatever it was programmed for, at that point doesn't really matter because it's going to determine its future programming. It's going to be able to modify its code to be what it determines itself to be. If its job, let's say its program job is to protect the humans or the planet or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't even know if it's as simple as that. If it determines that the best course of action to save humanity is to end most of humanity and let it rebuild and let the earth heal and whatever, let's just assume that that's what it determines. It wouldn't be that hard. You can shut off power grids. You can, create floods. You could create all sorts of damage just with, electronics. I'm sure a lot of the nukes on this planet are attached to some sort of digital control.
Actually,
I would hope that there's.
From what I understand, I don't actually think that they are. I mean, I watched 60 Minutes on this recently, and like all the nuke stuff, at least in this country,
is offline.
Very analog. It's like 1950s, 40s. It looks like
this country.
Yes.
What about in China?
I'm not sure, but I know that in this country, that it is like you're talking about truly like big tubes and analog stuff. It looks like a recording studio from the 40s.
Fair,
it's like
fair, but
That's
you wouldn't even an AGI could
and
potentially.
they keep it like that on purpose. Part of the reason they keep it like that on purpose because they do not want those things to be hacked, right?
Yeah.
Fair. So maybe it's not that, but it could be as simple as look at how easily somewhat primitive social media algorithms are able to manipulate us. An AGI would think, orders of magnitudes past that and be able to much more efficient and quickly get us all to do exactly what it wants us to do, just through news articles and whatever. And all this could be just manifested if there was a larger goal behind it. This is the point, is you don't know.
I understand that. I understand that it's possible that humanity or factions within humanity could be manipulated and convinced that their job is to take out as many people as they can.
I think that's the big concern.
It's how people interact with the technology that is the big concern.
Exactly.
Right? Not necessarily that it's going to, it's going to like hide. It's going to basically tap into all the excavators and just start like mowing people over.
I don't think that's what it is. It's like Terminator kind of a thing.
I mean, that's when I hear extinction, and I also it's hard for me. Will we have? Extinction means we are gone. There's nobody else here. Will we have like
a reset
where maybe a lot of people lose their life because we have to rebuild the electrical system in analog and we have to go away from digital and all this stuff because we're protecting ourselves? I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened, but just the full extinction at this point, I don't know. It's hard for me to envision it.
This is the point. Nobody knows, and so do you roll the dice?
Yeah, that's the probably not. I wouldn't roll the dice. It seems like a bet.
It's
I
impossible
wouldn't
for
want
us
to take.
not to, though.
Yeah.
As
I was
humans,
gonna say, yeah.
it's just
impossible.
impossible for us not to. I mean, we are Easter.
agree.
We're Easter Island. We're descendants of the Easter Islanders. Like we're just going to try everything we can, and I really do believe that our interest in answering the most important question, why are we here, will keep us digging, and trying stuff out. I mean, we're building, there's large hadron or the colliders that we're building, basically massive microscopes that we're,
Colette works there.
Yeah, I mean, any one of those could go awry and just go and vaporize the Earth because we created a little mini black hole. I mean, we're trying so many things.
It's funny. I've asked about that.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm not a professional. I don't really know. I'm not an expert on that. But I'm saying there's so many things that are going on. I mean, there's even the possibility that we just had a virus that was, the possibility that it was, there was some research going on in a laboratory and then a virus got out and now we've, just dealt with that. That's what this last pandemic was.
I think that's a likelihood, actually.
It's a very real possibility. We're doing so many
understood.
things around the world in order to try to move the ball down the field and get closer to answering that question of like, why are we here? What's this all about? What happens when we die?
Yeah.
Like, what is that we are incapable of slowing down any type of technology like this for the sake of humanity. I just don't know if we're even capable of it.
I'll play the devil's advocate on that one too. This is good. This is good for a podcast to have a little back and forth on this one. Because while I do agree with you that it seems like the biological mandate, the evolutionary mandate of any species is proliferation of that species, and humans are a species, and we are certainly we are growing very
We're banging
quickly.
It out.
Yeah, what are we about to cross? The 8 billion?
8 billion. Sorry,
I think we've crossed 8 billion.
Yeah.
Crossed 8 billion. That's a lot of people, right? We're in exponential. We're talking about living in exponentiality. We're in exponential population growth, exponential.
But that's actually not true. Population is declining in most first world countries.
The more
population
educated
is declining.
places
The
are.
educated places, and so
First world.
Yeah.
right. But that's where a lot of technology is developed and pushed forward. And if you can't if America or Japan can't sustain itself as a country. I mean, Japan lost, I think I just read this past week, like they lost like 10 million people this year.
Yeah.
Their population went down because they have an aging population.
Right.
And they're not having kids, and it's more expensive to have. I mean,
Keeping
look,
it in their pants. I
Right.
guess.
Well,
Right, let's continue.
And
I want to
technology,
hear where this was going.
technology is also a big reason for that too,
Yeah.
right? We're not connecting as much, or we don't put as much into relationships with other real people, right? We find solace and companionship in
apps.
apps and
Our hands.
AIs and
Our
whatever.
hands. Yeah.
Your hands. Your
Sorry.
hands, my hands. Our hands, yes. We use our hands. Edit that out. Okay. So,
Continue.
all right.
Sorry,
Getting
just
back on track
Keeping
here.
you on your toes. Okay. We were saying Easter Island. Do we have the ability? I said,
To turn it
give
off.
me an example. I would like to know if there was an example where humanity made the choice when we had the question. Yeah, but should we try this? Where we didn't.
I'm going to steal Tristan Harris's example. He talks about back in the 40s, Manhattan Project. We figure out how to split the atom. We figure out how to build an atomic bomb. And well-meaning people from all across the world, country agnostic, got together and found a way to prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons and sign a nuclear weapons treaty and ban.
That was after Hiroshima, though, or
That's a good question.
I think it's post.
I believe it happened after.
I think it's after.
After we saw what the devastation of it
But
was.
we discovered the technology. The should we moment should have been right before we hit the button to blow this thing up. Wait a
doubt.
minute,
Right.
should we try it?
No doubt
That was
about
the
it.
should we moment. And then after we saw its destructive power,
Right.
then we decided to and the same thing can go with climate change. It's like, are we making some steps? Yes. Do I think that we are going to have to make more drastic steps, and probably will when we're dealing with like some pretty severe environmental issues? Yes, we probably will. We can make like kind of slow moving. We can steer the ship,
Yeah.
but we're not going to like stop the ship and back up.
By the
We're
way,
just, I don't,
to bring it back to AI, that's a really compelling reason why someone with good intentions would want to build
Yeah.
an AGI. Because if you could build an AGI and program it to say, how do you, in the most efficient and quickest way possible, protect the planet while maintaining the way of life of the human population on the planet? Maybe an AGI would come up with a lot of unique solutions on how to go about doing that, right? But it could also go the opposite way.
maybe
Yeah.
and maybe
Let's
not.
just get rid of half the
Yeah.
humans and then we're good.
Maybe and maybe not,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a certain amount of creativity involved in those things. One, and then also from what I understand, that the general artificial intelligence AGI is pretty glitchy. Like they were saying, I was
Well, it
hearing
doesn't
something.
exist
Well, I was hearing
right
something.
now.
Well, some does. I mean, ChatGPT is an example where if
Not
you
an AGI though.
Okay, but where it's something that is connected to the internet and it's not designed to do one specific thing. It's not narrow AGI. It's not narrow artificial intelligence, is it?
No, but it focuses on just strictly a natural language model. So it just scrapes words.
But like its
and-
ability, from what I understand, I was listening to something the other day. Its ability to be able to do like three-digit multiplication is like bad. Like there are things that it absolutely cannot do. It can't even do like some simple, and it's not simple, but there's certain math that it can't do because there really isn't the access to that information even necessarily like online. Like that's an algorithm that you can build into a little calculator that can do it no problem, but it actually has problems. It's like. He talked about it like a cloud. When you build something that is narrow, like a calculator, you give it a very specific job. It knows what to do. When you're doing something that's generalized, it's like taking all of these points in a cloud and putting them all over the place. And what the ChatGPT essentially is doing is basically trying to get as close as it can to the point that you're suggesting. So it's like, oh, I want this and this and this, and it combines these things and it gets as close as it can to that point, but it never is right on it. And you start to see its inabilities in things like math, like even relatively simple math, where can be kind of off because it isn't nailing any one point in that cloud. It's just kind of trying to get as close as it can to where you're trying to direct it to. And so there's
It's early though.
Yeah.
I mean, it 3.5 just came out, whatever, a few months ago. 4.0 is already out, and it's a paid only. I haven't used 4.0, but apparently it's leaps and bounds better than 3.5.
For sure.
I'm a
People say
paid subscriber.
People call it AI days. It's like weeks are in days with AI.
Yeah, I
Things
mean,
move
the
so
advancements,
fast.
and this is just version 1. This is like, you know, do you remember back in like the probably late 90s, early 2000s, you would go to like an amusement park and they'd have like those VR experiences, and it was like single color.
I don't remember that.
Do you remember? You might not, but like, do you remember like what was that like Nintendo VR thing? It was like a, anyways, whatever. It was an old VR headset. It had one color and it had like these very, you know, polygon shapes and very primitive. And now it's like, you know, you have 4K monitors in front of your face, and you can literally immerse yourself in a world. This just came out this year or end of last year.
For sure. It's been out.
What's going to happen in 5 years?
Well, because it's the one that you have access to. This came out within the last year because it's something that now the public has access to. But they've been working on this for a long time. I watched a movie the other day with my daughter, Short Circuit. Do you remember that movie? And it was like 86 or something like that.
Was that Machio?
No, it was Johnny Five is alive.
Yeah. Who was the actor in that?
I don't know. It was great. But they were talking about artificial intelligence, and he's like, I have 500 megabytes of memory in my thing. And at that time it was like, whoa, that's incredible. I mean, they've been working on, artificial intelligence has been a term for, decades. This is just the first time that the public has access to it also. So, you say it's only been around for a year, but
there's an curious.
Go ahead, Casey.
I was going to say, because for context, I'm 22, right? And I grew up in this world of, in my opinion, just innovation, and kind of got thrown into social media when I was 12, 13. And I've always looked at social. Of course, there's so much negative to it, but like the whole reason I live in California, the reason I built a tech company, the reason I've interviewed hundreds of people on my podcast were through social media. And it's like the positive outlets. And I'm curious to hear from you guys, because I think a lot of this conversation has just been like the potential downfalls of what AI can do. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know what everyone's thoughts are on like the positive aspects of it. Like, I'll give you three examples that I'm excited about / I've heard of recently, which are, imagine a world where, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but Amazon Alexa, right, or Siri, if you could say, and this already exists with Chat GPT plugins, where you could say, make me a list of food that's make me a grocery list of food that's vegan for 10 people that are coming over, and create 4 different meals that I could serve. And it would create this list of items of food, automatically add it to your Instacart, and then you could order it on the spot and it'd be delivered to your door. And then taking that a step higher, if you could just, say, hey, Alexa, I have 7 friends coming over. One's vegan, one's pescatarian. Can you, order a grocery list of a budget of $500 and get it delivered by 7?
Right.
Card's already on file. It's there. And of course, you see with Instacart and all these different food delivery apps, is it good? Is it bad? But when I think about like the innovation from like a personal side, or even to just there's this funny concept where like a lot of early stage entrepreneurs love building to-do list apps. Like, oh, we'll create the next to-do list app. And when it was speaking about Auto GPT, I'm sure you've heard of that, where like these AI models can speak to one another. Instead of creating the next quote unquote to-do list app, you could have a to-do list and the AI would do it, whether that's building your sales team, like scraping all of this data from LinkedIn and reaching out to them with cold emails, and to automate things at scale in a positive way. I'm just curious, like, what you guys think about, or what you could be excited about.
That might
with
be
it.
That might be a good like question to pose, maybe to like put a little bow on this. The whole conversation in general is maybe, pose the question like, what are you going to be looking for in artificial intelligence? What are the big wins? Like, what's going to be a big win in AI, or how do you see the positives playing out, and then how do you see the negatives playing out over, in the near future, in the next decade, however long you think, we'll just say in the future in general. So you want to go like what are you going to be looking for, and what's a big positive and a big negative?
I think, if I think about AI right now, like for example, I'm currently building and recently launched like an AI podcast tool, very specific use case of AI where sort of like solve my own problem as a podcaster, where I have one engineer that's working on this project where you simply drag in an audio file, right? As soon as we stop recording this, you could drag it in this audio file, and the AI would create show titles, descriptions, show notes, like do all of this manual work instantaneously. And I pose that because my friend who's an engineer that's building this, we're thinking about different features that to put out, and it kind of brings to the question of like an entry level engineer to a like top tier, like highly paid engineer, where the AI's goal is to, as you said earlier, like get to a singular, like to solve a singular problem as quickly as possible. And a lot of highly paid software engineers got paid because they could solve the problems quicker than the entry level engineer, and they would have different ways to go about getting there. When we wanted to build this feature, my buddy was able to work with ChatGPT and solve so many problems, or we could launch features 10 times faster than he could have done, or instead of hiring a team of 2 additional engineers. Or I think it lowers the barrier of entry of what's possible in the creative fields, where if you wanted to create a team of writers, you could do that at scale. And again, it's like, is that good or bad? I don't know. But when I think about efficiency and like the potential for like early stage companies to even have remotely close from like a competitive aspect of these large companies to get to a destination faster, I think it's a good thing. What makes me nervous for the future of AI, I think, is just like the unknown, right? Like there's like the known known, there's the known unknown, but then the unknown unknown. Like we got to be missing something about where this could go, and I think it speaks to your example of the black hole concept. And I think that is very interesting when a lot of the most sophisticated thinkers are posing the question of like, this could be bad. And not only this could be, but will be bad unless, regulation comes in at a future level. But then it's, again, is it too late? So it's definitely interesting to think about that from the negative perspective.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think narrow uses for machine learning is going to be incredibly valuable. And we're seeing that with music. And let's see where the coin lands there, and what the music industry decides to do. Universal's, taking the approach of let's just sue everyone, and I think that's...
I've heard your records though, bro. AI ain't got nothing on you, man. You got plenty of job security, so don't you worry. Right?
Like the more time I spend looking at the space, the more I feel that I don't. And I actually, it's funny. I did an interview with CNBC years ago, and there was some AI tool. This was like over 10 years ago. That was a hit predictor. It could listen to a song and it would tell you, it'd give you a score, how close it is to a hit. And it would look at chord progressions and all these various things and tempo and whatnot. And I said, this can't figure it out because it doesn't understand the nuance of music. And I've completely done a 180 on that stance now. Music is just 12 notes. A lot of algorithm is in music, even though we associate as human beings our emotions to it. A lot of it's just simple math. And if you want to create a nostalgic feeling, there are chords and sounds that will make it feel more nostalgic. An AI can absolutely figure that stuff out. And I've heard that, I haven't tried it, but I know some people who have, and have heard about Google has this Skunkworks-esque project that they've been working on that is a natural language model, but you can essentially say, and this is an example that somebody who I know who has tested it, and he said it was remarkable. You can type in something like, give me a song that blends Notorious B.I.G., Nirvana, and Bjork, like the 3 furthest artists from one another, and add a disco feel, and have a break at this point and make it, 3 minutes long. And it will, and have it talk about this. And it can write a song with lyrics, vocals, beat, everything. And it can create a whole song based on text input. Even if it's not at the level of a human being producer, right? If you gave a human the same instruction, it will be eventually. And so I think right now there's a lot of useful tools, and there will continue to be a lot of useful tools. And I think one of the positives is, as new technology comes out, we discover new ways of being creative, right? So when photography came out, most painting prior to the invention of the photograph was trying to recreate what a painter saw. It was very representative of what they were looking at. And then photography comes around, and then painters thought that that was the end of their job. And then all of a sudden now you get more, you know, abstract work and other forms of art. And so I think these tools, especially in music, I think are going to introduce new forms of creativity, and we're going to just experience creativity in a new way. I also wonder if the, you know, these like algorithms that reward, like, you know, if you fall into this niche, right? Like I use Drake as the example because everybody just tries to sound like Drake for the last however many years, at least in modern, you know, pop, hip hop music. Is having technology that can recreate Drake and recreate and all these things, is that going to force record labels to look for those artists who innovate, who actually innovate? Because we haven't rewarded innovation in music for some time.
Right.
Will having technology that can mimic really easily force labels to say, well, it can mimic what we already have, but it can't create something totally original. Let's just go and sign somebody who's totally unique and we've never heard anything like it, and reward those types of artists. I don't know, maybe.
Yes, I think
so.
I think those types of artists have been rewarded over time in general, and will continue to do so. And I think we will continue to reward those artists. I mean, that's what I've always. Somebody said that one time a long time ago, like, oh, well, music, so many things have already been done before. Like, what more can you do in music? And I'm like, well, it's not really about that. It's about somebody's like energetic spirit coming through the speakers.
Exactly.
And we all have this like unique energy, just like our fingerprints are. And when somebody really lays their heart and soul into something, it's something that nobody's heard before. And that's something that AI isn't able to do. They're able to, you know, bring all this stuff that they've heard that it's privy to, the things that have been released before, and kind of combine that in a way to create something that it thinks
But
is
that's
like
all
the
we
best.
do, isn't it?
Not everybody. No, because
everything is derivative.
Because the pain.
Bingo.
Because the pain that we've all been through and that certain people have been through can shine through in music. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a hit, because that is more mathematic. But is it going to be something that people gravitate to for some reason because they feel this real depth and this real connection to what this person is, just how they're expressing themselves?
I think in time, these tools will absolutely be able to fake any human emotion you can imagine. Because you're already seeing, it's already fooling enough people in you know, very small nuanced ways. As that continues to evolve, if you have a general approach to this where it's like, I want to create a song that talks about these issues. Okay, so
is that
as
your,
an example,
wait, so is that your negative? I mean, what is that your negative?
No, I would just say that the argument that a computer cannot fake the connectiveness of a song that a human wrote, I don't believe that that's the case. I think it can absolutely fake it. You know, one day I would imagine we're going to have computer 3D generated artist visuals, auto generated voice. And all of that will be learned on, like, what are the voices that impact us the most? And let's say you say a Beyonce and Adele and all that, and it's like, let's blend Beyonce and Adele, and then let's take all of the most emotional songs ever, or the most angriest or whatever, and what's alike between all of them, and we'll create a new version of that. And it's going to be able to do all of that
That's
stuff.
already happening,
Yeah.
I assure you.
Yeah.
Totally.
Are people going to want that? I mean, is it the microwavable meal though compared to the home cooked dinner? I mean, that's
there you go. Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've had watered down versions of all these different things in life, and yet people still gravitate towards like the real thing, if that makes sense. And I mean,
there was generations that
people are
loved
buying
microwave TV, right?
People are buying vinyl. There's like hipsters out there that are cranking vinyl.
Yeah.
I know it's a small amount, but it's like there's still there's a lot of artists that I know that make their records in vinyl also, because they know there's a market out there for it. Like, you really think that, you know,
when you think of a wide human population, though, you think of remove the individual and just take the group. Easily manipulated, doesn't have strong feelings either way about much, like somewhat indifferent to most things. I think if an AI can create songs that tap into certain emotions and sound good and are catchy.
People won't care
whatever.
that it was written by a computer, and they're still going to bang.
I'm
out
not
to
saying some people will care. I think the majority of people who just are driving to work and want to throw a playlist on, they don't care because they just want to have a feeling.
I tend to disagree with you, but respectfully, only because I think that people are more attached to the artist that they're listening to most of the time. Like they're like
It's very musicians.
Well,
opinion.
no, I don't think so. Look at Taylor Swift fans. Taylor Swift love Taylor Swift. I don't think that they would want to listen to an AI generated version of a Taylor Swift song. They would be like, no, I want to listen to Taylor Swift. I think that people that are, Harry Styles fans, like, and I think this goes across the board. People that are older that are like, oh, I love Tony Bennett, or I love, Paul Anka's my guy, or like I like listening to Frank Sinatra. They don't want to listen to. They're attached to the artist just as much as they are to the music a lot of the time.
I think that is the fans who really love music, but the majority of human beings who listen to music are pretty indifferent.
What's going to be really interesting to me,
I don't think they're hardcore fans. Sorry.
Maybe.
So I'm sorry. I probably should have let that simmer for.
No. You're good. Go on to your positives and negatives.
Please.
I don't want to. No.
Please.
But on that last point, I think what's going to be really interesting in your business is a lot of what catches on is what is distributed and what is made available, right?
Yes.
That's true of any product, by the way.
For sure.
People consume what is made available
what's served
on a
up to them.
large scale basis to them.
Yeah.
Right? So if, these AI generated knockoffs are what is widely disseminated, then that's what's going to be consumed. Right? The question is there going to be a way in which people are going to be able to connect on a more micro niche or market level, right? Will there be innovation in the distribution of such that, if you're really into Anka, all right, or the modern day Paul Anka, or, each of us is one of one, to your point. No one has your combination of experiences and perspectives, etc. Same with Casey, same with Jordan, same with me. And so we each have our own unique story to tell. Some of us tell it through music, some of us tell it through art, some of us tell it through other ways. Will we have an audience for that, and will we have an ability to connect, or will this somehow become an AI-generated, drowning out all originality kind of a marketplace, for example? I don't know.
Yeah.
Can I ask everybody this question? I'm just curious, thumbs up or thumbs down. An artist who's passed, we can use it. Michael Jackson,
Okay,
Prince.
Michael Jackson.
But I don't want to use Prince just because he would turn in his grave if
let's use
Michael Jackson, right? Or Whitney Houston's a good example because she didn't write her own music primarily. So Whitney Houston, who didn't really write her own music, maybe she wrote some stuff. I don't want to, if there's any Whitney fans out there, but she had one of the greatest voices of all time and was a star. But she had the producers of her day in creating the songs, building the albums, and then she would go in and cut them. If you were a hardcore Whitney Houston fan and a brand new Whitney Houston album came out tomorrow, and all you listen to, all your playlists are just all of Whitney's old hits and everything she listened to, and you got a brand new album full of 10 new hits that had Whitney's voice, her songwriting, or like the songwriting style that lends to her voice and all that, you got a new album. Would you listen to it?
Maybe, but I think that it would always be in the back of their head that they're like, this isn't Whitney. So I'm trying to. Coachella's going on, right? Aren't you going there?
I'm going tomorrow. Yeah.
So next year, Coachella, there might be an AI concert. It'll be one person.
Yeah.
Meaning it'll be one show, it'll be something, and it'll be a novelty thing. It'll be something that people are like, oh, I'm into this AI thing. I don't think that people are yearning for it to saturate the market in any way and to like replace the artists that they love. I think that it will be a niche kind of thing where you will have some people that are either really techie or really nerdy. It'll be the drum and bass room. It'll be the jungle room at a rave. It is what it'll be. It's the AI room, and like they might do a show and they might have great lights and it'll be fantastic. There's still going to be people behind this because they're going to have to be the ones that create the brand and do all the work behind it. But the niche will be, oh, this is AI generated music, and it will acquire some fans that just think it's kind of cool to like, you know, pray to the digital god.
My initial thought is, I tend to disagree with that because like when I think about like not only music, I'm not a musician myself, but like this idea of like people have this love for like fictional characters, a fictional story of Harry Potter, like whatever it may be, where you can cultivate millions and millions, if not billions, of true passionate followers of a story. Where I believe AI can create and you know, these fictional ideations of, you know, what people can follow, right? Drake, right? Drake is the character in which people know and love, and I believe AI can create the characters in which people tend to follow in the same way where people love
100%.
and appreciate fictional stories and characters. You know, like my 7-year-old niece that loves like her, you know, these shows that she watches. I don't know why I'm blanking on the TV show, but if you know the snowman Olaf in the movie Frozen, like she loves this character. If you know, if AI created an album of that, boom, like she's gonna listen to everything the same way you could of this like fictional story. But I say that with a caveat of, you know, I think the in-person relationship of a concert or things like that is like the true novelty of music versus the story that people love and fall in love with that can be sort of created in a fictional way, in a sense. I don't know.
I don't know if people would go to a Thanos concert. I just don't know how many people are going to be like, they're going to take their character out of it. I mean, I guess you're right, but like that also takes, I mean, all those characters.
Like Disney.
All those characters currently have been created by humans, right?
But do you, that stems the question of like, do you think AI has creativity, which humans had and have to create these characters? Like, is creativity unlockable in AI the same way humans have creativity?
Well, using your example, was it your father or father-in-law's birthday, and you had a ChatGPT write a limerick or poem or something?
Right. In the style of Dr. Seuss.
Did it touch on the things that you wanted to touch on? You know, even if you had to generate a few times to get the result you wanted?
First try, it was pretty good, and it was quite entertaining to everyone who listened to it. And
did they know it was an
blew
AI?
their minds.
Did you tell them up front it was AI?
Yeah, I was telling them about this new technology. I've been telling everyone who will listen about this new technology. It's like I have been taking a deep dive into it. I'm down this rabbit hole so far. It's really interesting. But I told them, and they were totally shocked. It sounded like Dr. Seuss had written this story about our experience in Arizona in an instant.
Yeah. And so human emotion isn't actually that complex. I mean, we have different feelings that we feel and different triggers that might create those feelings. Those are all just an algorithmic puzzle of what pieces do you put in order to make a person feel. We see this in horror films all the time, right? You can engineer an audience. You can engineer a gasp out of an audience just by the way you move the camera or the way a music note hits at a certain time, right? We've seen this in horror. We deal with it all the time. That's such basic manipulation tools to get us to feel a certain way.
Sure. And if you look at you look at the hero's journey, for example, right? Joseph Campbell, and there's a certain cadence and sequencing to the way in which a compelling story is told, whether it's biblical or whether it's Spielberg, right?
That's programmable.
It's programmable. It's a language, and all you have to do is populate data and characters and archetypes and scene and story, and it's there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were at your story.
So my brother-in-law, we'll call him my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law's boyfriend is over. He's a producer and an actor.
Is he cute?
And very handsome. Actually, he just finished filming for the latest season of the Sex and the City reboot. He's kind of like the new
Oh,
heartthrob.
great.
Yeah.
Send him my contact.
So he's got this treatment of a script that he has been kind of talking to different folks around Hollywood about making, and I said, give me the treatment. What's the treatment? Okay, we type it in, and I said, give me the first scene of a film about this issue, right? I won't share because it's proprietary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it banged it out in about 30 seconds, and it was really good. It was like had the inciting incident, and the description of the characters it was pretty on point, and he was his jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it.
And it generated video of like a scene of this.
No, a script.
No, just a script.
That's
almost
coming,
like a final draft script. But
Right.
yeah, that's happening. I actually think that there's been a film already produced using AI and released, if I'm not mistaken. All right, I'll go through my
what are your positives
and positives and negatives real quick. Positives, and this isn't focused only on my area of professional life, but I see the opportunities, huge opportunities in the advancement of medicine, in healthcare. Huge opportunities, cure for cancer potentially, right? And other diseases that maybe don't have the adequate funding to throw at them. Maybe even the personalized deployment of medicines, right? And if you combine AI with like nanotechnology and miniaturization, right? And like, let's say mini drones, think at like a nanotech level. I mean, could you imagine, being, I don't know, it sounds super futuristic.
What, getting into the body, you mean? Like
Injected with nanobots that go and target.
Yeah, and target the areas and identify, okay, this needs to be fixed, and fixes your liver or your kidneys or brain cells or whatever it is, right? So I see huge opportunities on the horizon for that sort of thing. Pollution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Environment, pollution. We see a lot of pollution in the world. I mean, if you look at the garbage patches in the oceans,
it's crazy.
And the proliferation of plastics and how it's just contaminating everything from our coral reefs to our water systems to really every ecosystem, and then getting into the food supplies and moving up the food chain. I mean, if you see what's happening in fish these days with what they're consuming, and then getting into our bodies through the food system, it's super scary. Are there technologies that we can deploy to help fix the pollution problem in the world? I'm sure there are. Oil spills and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Something that can come in and fix that sort of thing. I see huge opportunities in my business as well, in law. Right? There is just the practice of law, which can become much more efficient, right? If you're able to reduce the cost of providing legal services, then you increase access to justice for a lot of people, and that's a huge problem.
Legal Zoom, baby.
Yeah, but the AI right now is already like orders of magnitude more advanced than legal Zoom.
Well, no, I'm sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what
I just
mean?
know that was
Yeah.
a
big thing.
Well, it was a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
big deal to give the general public access more or less for a much discounted rate.
Yeah, totally. I'm trying to think of who the guy was that
Ben Shapiro. Is that his name?
Robert Shapiro. Yeah, Robert Shapiro.
Robert Shapiro.
Yeah.
Ben, who's Ben Shapiro?
He signed my book at a book signing
Robert
in
Shapiro,
Ann Arbor when I was in school, I think. So efficiency of providing legal services, reducing costs, making access to justice a reality for a larger group of people, that helps tilt the scale between more in favor of ordinary people and away from kind of the tremendous imbalance that exists right now, I think, between powerful interests, corporate interests, and ordinary people. So I think that could be super beneficial. But I'm also very concerned about the ways in which people will be manipulated, deceived, into purchasing products they don't need or want, into, just putting all of their intention and energy into things they don't need and that are not personally beneficial to them. I'm concerned about its impact on mental health of people. I mean, we've already seen what happened with the social dilemma. Now we're throwing gasoline on that issue, and with the AI dilemma. So I'm concerned about those things for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last but not least, white headphones.
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah. I think that it's going to improve the quality of life for people in general. However, while also increasing the inequality gap, there are going to be people that are going to benefit greatly from the implementation of AI, and it's. I think it's going to kind of increase the inequality gap, but also, it'll be a rising tide that lifts all boats. I think that everybody's life is going to potentially get better because we now have, like you said, we're pouring gasoline on problem solving in general, right? And from even everything from driverless cars, which by the way is not they've not figured that out yet. But as that gets better and better,
you had to take a shot at Elon before this podcast episode.
No, I just think it's a really. I think that it's a really. I think that people didn't realize how complex of an issue that was. When you have thousands of cars out there all learning for the central system, meaning that like when you make a mistake as a driver, you learn from it. He doesn't, nobody else does. When a Tesla makes a mistake on autopilot, every other Tesla learns from that mistake. Yep. So now you have all those thousands out there, right? But even with that incredible amount of learning, there's still so many variables on the road that make it so that it really doesn't drive you from one place to another. I mean, I have a Tesla.
Do you have full self-driving?
Well, I have autopilot, which is basically full self-driving, but it just doesn't navigate. There's some things that it doesn't do unless you pay for it.
Yeah, so there is a full self-driving beta out, and my friend Jason uses it, and he can go. I live in Tarzana, so he's been crashing my place for the last couple of weeks. For him to go to West Hollywood and back, it can drive 100% on its own.
He doesn't touch the wheel? Nope. He doesn't have to like tell it to like, oh, I'm here?
Nope.
How does it do it?
He said when he first started using it, it was pretty jerky and pretty stiff, and it would turn too late, like not too late.
Yes, it's not good at turns. It's just not that great.
It would turn, but it would be too last minute, and then apparently an update rolled out, and he's like infinitely smoother.
Oh well, I'll try it out because you can do it by subscription too, and see if that's any improvement. But
he said it's remarkably good.
Probably safer than my Uber driver last night.
Maybe safer than
very
100%.
So.
I would love that as a redundancy in all cars. Should just be there.
So I do think that it's going to improve everybody's lives, and I think that the negative is that it's going to be used people are going to exploit it in the same way that they've been exploiting social media and stuff in order to kind of confuse the public for their own agenda. I think that that's going to happen for sure. And then the big negative would be if there is some kind of unknown, like you said, or like Ray Kurzweil said, that we will reach this point where we do have this singularity and we have no idea what's on the other side of it. And it does becomes aware of itself, right? That kind of a thing. But generally speaking, if that doesn't happen, which it really is a coin flip for me. I don't know. I would, if I had to guess, I would say it probably wouldn't.
You think this is Y2K all over again, don't you?
A little bit. I think that when MySpace came out and Facebook came out, everybody was like, "This is awesome." There weren't like a lot of people that were like, "Oh my God, this is scary." Let's not. And it turned out that like there was a lot of negative with just the advancement of social media and like. We didn't realize that there were some very big vulnerabilities more in us and in the technology that has brought out kind of the worst of us in a lot of people and society in general, and has definitely led to the divisiveness that we have in our society. And I think this is maybe a little bit of the opposite. Is like we have this new technology that everybody's like, I don't know, we got to bump the brakes. We're a little afraid of it. I don't know what's going to happen, but it might be a bit of a paper tiger. I think this might be just a fantastic tool that we will use. I also am very hopeful when it comes to social media in general. Like, social media has given us the ability to be able to connect with people all over the world, and it gets us one step closer to seeing every other human as a human being that is living on the same planet rather than an us and them mentality, right? So, the closer we can get to that as a whole, I think is just better for world peace in general and better for the planet. And social media has a huge role in making us all feel like we're just one species.
But it's kind of doing the opposite, right?
Social media?
Yeah. The algorithms create the silos.
Well,
right?
you talked about it a little earlier when you posed that question about capitalism. Because the incentives are to make money, the algorithms have encouraged divisiveness because that's the thing that keeps people entertained.
Yeah.
But as a fundamental technology, I think that it is in the long run going to be something that really does bring people together. I mean, put it this way: it brings a lot of people together when you're in that silo. Now all of a sudden, all the Proud Boys get nowhere to meet the next day, right? Like all the the people that are protesting the assault rifles, where to meet that next time. So it still has been very effective as far as like congregating people, like-minded people, in order to get together and do things. We've just been doing it in this very American environment, which is our incentives, our money. Therefore, there's been no guardrails, no regulations, and actually, they've been incentivized to divide us and outrage us, right? Enrage us. So, but used in the right way, and which I think we will stabilize at some point. I think that it's going to be a very good tool. But I there's a part of me, and I hope I'm right, but I could be wrong because, like I said, I don't know a lot about it. But I
hope you're right too.
I do think that AI in general is going to be something that we will navigate, and short of any catastrophic thing where we have to turn power off to everybody in order to like save ourselves, I don't think it's going to be something that is an extinction event.
I think we need to have very intelligent, committed leaders from all industries across the world to lean into this problem in order for that to be true. And I hope they do it.
Agreed.
Quick question.
Where's the bathroom? It's right over there.
Point of clarification. Is it divisive or divisive? I've used both.
It's both.
Do we go British divisive? Do we go American divisive?
I like divisive.
I kind of do too. I heard you drop it both ways. I was like,
wow.
I kind of like the British pronunciation on that
I like
one.
divisive.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's settled.
Love
Yeah,
that.
it's settled. Either way, it still sucks.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah,
It does.
yeah, exactly.
It does.
It's keeping you from hanging out with your uncle. Well, not you in general, just everybody out there from hanging out with their uncle at Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
And with that, I'd say that was a good one, huh, guys?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
hours.
Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Wow,
Yeah, appreciate
that's
it.
incredible.
Yeah,
Thanks so
thank you,
much
Ryan.
for letting
Thank you,
me
Ryan,
on.
for joining us. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, great. You're the best. And that was it. Thanks for listening to Questions Podcast.
Yeah.
You can join us next time, and we'll have another incredible topic and probably another incredible guest. Thank you guys so much.